Good morning and welcome to the Valiant live stream on Thursday mornings. Hi, Matt. Hi, George. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome. Thanks, Megan.
Good morning.
Great.
Doing well. Hope you guys are doing well too.
Feeling pretty good. Had my coffee, so that's really great. Regular viewers, thank you guys so much for being here. We show up here every week for you. We appreciate you so much. A little bit about Valiant. If you're new here, we are a managed service provider, a managed IT services provider, and we are based in New York City, but we do have a national reach. And if you want to learn about us, please watch our previous episodes on our YouTube channel and join the conversation by commenting on YouTube and LinkedIn. This is as of last week, right? You can also watch our live stream via Twitter.
Yeah,
so
If you
follow
go to our
us.
Twitter account at the Valiant Way, you can watch it there as well. So we're everywhere. You can't open your eyes and not see Valiant between 10:30 and 11 on every Thursday.
That's right.
Exactly. You're
That's
welcome.
Right.
I say.
Really quickly, not to derail things, but I just feel like George should tell us who his favorite Ninja Turtle is if he's going to have a Ninja Turtle coffee mug.
I'm like a Michelangelo guy, but that's a whole other story. That's another stream.
He wears orange. That's perfect.
I know.
He's all brown.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's very. And also, George, I think we had some good news this week. If you want to.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have some new team members. We're really excited. I just want to welcome Lizzie, Jalissa, and Carla to the Valiant, to our company and our firm. And, there's some great roles, and we're always looking for great people to work with. So welcome. And we're going to put some other stuff on social as it kind of unfolds in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. Excellent. So, Megan, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we are talking about a hot topic and a very prevalent topic, just cybersecurity breaches. Current ones over the last year, we have a lot to pull from, unfortunately, when we started to do this topic. But I think we wanted to do this topic to kind of almost surgically look at how these breaches happen, what these breaches are, what vectors and industries they affect, so people really understand, again, the prevalence of this threat. So, George, do you want to start us off?
So, absolutely. I mean, this is something, we kind of follow this really closely, this based not only for ourselves, but for our customers. And also it is interesting and terrifying on some level. Yeah. But honestly, this happened yesterday.
Yeah,
massive Twitch breach. And I think that's really, really interesting because Twitch admitted that they're able to get into all their internal systems, payment, code, commits, the whole nine. And I understand that over 128 gigs of data was brought out of the systems and published to the internet. We don't really necessarily know the full extent of it, but that's a pretty bad breach. That's
128 gigs, most likely text.
Correct.
We're not talking media files. We're talking text.
Text, right? This is not like video. 128 gigs of video is not a big deal. 128 gigs of a database of files. That's a lot of data. And if we understand it, it's Twitch is recommending that everyone change the password, enable two-factor. And really why this is so important is this is very targeted for what it seems like, but we don't really know the full extent. But that targeting is illustrative of how bad it can be. If your firm is targeted, and think about Twitch has the resources of Amazon behind it. So, and those are some of the best and brightest people in the world.
Right.
So this is going to show you how prevalent, how dangerous the situation is, and how we have to really just be constantly vigilant, protect yourselves and stuff like that.
I think honestly, it's also worth saying that it is still very early on, but yes, it does look very targeted because they're saying that it happened due to a configuration error. A configuration error is something that would have either existed for some time and eventually get exploited, or just happens to be bad timing with like a drive-by. But either one of those scenarios, there is going to be some kind of targeting involved. This
Absolutely.
wasn't like a shotgun approach where you just kind of pull the trigger and see what happens.
And that actually ties us into our next breach that I just want to go over. It's really important, which is the Colonial Pipeline one, which I think a lot of people felt personally.
Yes.
We saw it especially here in the East Coast. The Colonial Pipeline breach was honestly, because someone didn't update an Exchange server. If
Very simple. Yeah.
Did not patch. That's why patching is so important. Not to belabor the point and beat it up, but patching is one of the critical kind of like nuts and bolts activity that is ongoing
activity. I think that's
always.
The most important word there.
Well,
sorry, Megan, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's interesting because when this happened, I've actually was able to educate people in my life a little bit about it. They didn't quite understand. They knew it was a big deal. The pipeline stretches from Houston to the southeastern U.S., and it's used to transport gasoline and fuel. So they were like, oh, it's an infrastructure thing. Something got obstructed, whatever. And it's like, no. And George, you can go into this, but it's like they breached. It was a ransomware attack that impacted equipment managing the pipeline in all operations.
Correct. It was a lot of it was billing. Like honestly, they couldn't bill. I mean, if you don't know how much gas is passing through and how much to charge for it, how do you continue passing gas? I don't know if that's not wrong, but yes. Sending gas, sending fuel. So I think that's really interesting from a perspective is that while at first blush it may look like the infrastructure, the IoT devices, the valves and pipeline, we're going to release this fuel into the environment. It's honestly, it was a really mundane attack, and like it was kind of like that's a drive-by.
It was less Superman, more Office Space.
Yeah,
right, exactly, 100%. So, and once again, that these kind of low-level systems that we rely on and businesses rely on at all times are so fragile, and you could shut down a whole operation. Even if you only take one segment of their operation offline.
Exactly.
I think what you got to do sometimes is maybe look at an operation as like a gigantic Rube Goldberg machine. What happens if one component of that is missing from that chain? Nothing.
Correct.
Nothing happens. It stops functioning.
Correct. Yes. Actually, it really is like a giant puzzle pieces, and one piece isn't completed. And especially as workflows get more automated, more reliant on less manual processes, which overall are generally better. But if you take that automation piece offline, now nothing works at all because there's some critical paths, there's critical pieces, critical systems, and it's just much more delicate. And all these, and the one thing that really comes through in these attacks is that that any one small piece can have a really deep ripple effect across an organization. So.
Yeah. I also think this wasn't something we discussed earlier, but this is also why, not that this would be the reason for this attack, but this is why training on all levels is very, very important. Every user has an IT presence, and a lot of these breaches can happen from kind of just going off what you were saying, George, like one segment of this business can cause huge ramifications. You also have to train the people working at your company, no matter what the level, because they need to know how to protect the company as well.
If you think about it from a different perspective, your attack surface, which is kind of a technical term for all the stuff you have, is your people, your staff, and your vendors and your partners and contractors. Those are all
things that can be manipulated.
Right, they're all part of the attack surface. So you have to kind of take them into consideration. And remember, and obviously we're highlighting a lot of large companies here, because these are kind of like highlight reel breaches. But day to day, so many small businesses are breached, and it's for the same reasons. I mean, the scale, the cause doesn't change. It's just that the impact on a smaller organization can be even worse, but you generally don't have the cybersecurity tools.
You don't have cash flow.
Cash flow.
You don't recover as well.
Right, the recovery. I mean, most small businesses don't survive this kind of attack. Obviously, Colonial Pipeline, a large organization, and also the next company that we wanted to kind of highlight through is the Jbs Attack, which I think is a really interesting one.
That's one of the attacks that the more you look into it, I think the scarier it was. I mean, look, JBS, the majority of what we're talking about right now took place in the United States, but JBS produces 1/5 of like beef or I'm not sure if it's pork, beef, meat in general. Thank you. Beef and pork production globally. 1/5.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hamburgers.
Yeah.
The pork chops.
The proper term is that's a lot of junior bacon cheeseburgers.
I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't mean to.
Which is why it's personal.
Excited. Yeah, it's very personal. But it's interesting. Obviously JBS is a massive multinational. They're headquartered in Brazil. U.S. operations was badly impacted. they, we in our research for this episode, we didn't really understand what happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of unclear
That's
of the
scary,
attack. The kind of the attack and they paid the ransom.
Yep, they did.
$11 million in Bitcoin, done, out the door. It's a lot of money. It's very dangerous, and it's in paying ransom is a very dangerous, very controversial thing right now, because it might be encouraging the piracy or the privateering.
Right.
So it's pretty scary and pretty interesting that JBS, and so we don't necessarily know what happened there, but food supply being impacted is really terrifying, and it actually kind of leads to our next one, which is actually even scarier. In my opinion.
This one feels, it's scarier. It also kind of what you were saying before, George, like smaller businesses or smaller operations. This feels like that, like that getting affected.
Talking about a topic like this, and I could tell I'm actually being a little bit quiet today because I don't like it. But this next one's actually sickening. I mean, it really is. It's we're talking that, it transcends technology into just kind of like
humanity.
Yeah, it does, and it gets you kind of like, I'm trying not to get aggressive, but you just want to find the person and put them through a wall or something on this one. It's that level of like just wrong.
I just want to name it before, because I feel like we're like it's the Eskenazi Health and other Eskenazi Health. It's a hospital, right?
Well, that's a hospital system, and the idea on this was that this is not the first time. It's not the only time it's happened this year. A lot of health systems have been targeted, and that's something that impacts their operations, but all of their patients as well, especially patients that are happen to be in need at the time. And that's really kind of the sickening part of this. I mean, when they were compromised by a ransom attack back in like August, they had to shut down their systems to prevent access to them. And that's bad enough. Throw in the fact that they had to start diverting ambulances.
Right.
What if you're in your house and you have that chest pain, you call 911 and they get you in that ambulance, you're having a heart attack, and they go, we got to drive another 30 miles west because we can't go to this hospital. Good luck.
And it's kind of, once again, looking through research here on this for this particular incident, was they're a level 1 trauma center, which means that people go to them for strokes, bad car accidents, hit by pedestrian. They have the right providers there, the right systems, to handle that. And now they're unable to provide that care. And, honestly, most healthcare institutions are on a constant attack from the outside. It's because the idea here is that it's such a vulnerable piece of such a valuable piece of infrastructure, and just exploiting vulnerabilities in the system. The idea is a ransom will get paid, and I think that's and once again, it's just such a disgusting thing.
It has the most direct impact on human life possible in a situation like that.
Well, I mean, a lot of times we joke here, system goes down, no one dies, but honestly, in a hospital, if a system goes down, someone could die, because the providers rely on those systems to provide the services. There's so many pieces to EMR nowadays, electronic medical records. Sorry, I use an acronym there, and I apologize. Electronic medical records are, people they use them for decision points. They make them for medication delivery. They use them for, anyone who works in that space could tell you how critically reliant we are on these systems to deliver care and outcomes. And then you layer on top of it the fact that we're in the midst of a non-ending global pandemic, and all of a sudden, what happens when an EMR or which is taking all those telemetry data from ventilation machines are offline?
We have hospital beds, but we don't have any systems to admit or actually care for you at this time. It's a real thing. I've never watched Grey's Anatomy, but I always see like
I am the resident expert.
Well, there was an episode, I think it must have been like 2 or 3 years ago, where there was a ransomware attack on the hospital, and all the systems went down. They're trying to figure out what to do. People are in need of medical care. They're trying to triage.
They can't look at histories and like what they're allergic to, all that stuff.
And I think that kind of played out in my head a little bit when we were doing the research on this, and it's just like you get that pain in your gut.
It's
really. I have a cousin who's a PACS administrator, and we talked about this once. A PACS being the system that's used for X-rays,
right?
And he was just like, if something like that happened at the hospital I worked at, I don't even know what I would do personally. not just professionally as to what to do for the patients, but I don't know how I would handle that personally.
It's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And once again, this is like, and most people go into healthcare or medicine because they help people, and now you're taking away that ability, and so this one is really disturbing. And once again, this is one's that training issue, preparation, and also and in this case, as you said, Matt, it might be actually going after folks who and bringing them to justice for attacking these kind of institutions.
It's a rough conversation to have, and I didn't want to bring it in that direction. But I think that there comes a point where you do have to put your foot down at some level when people's lives are on the line. In that sense, innocent lives in this case, there does need to be a breaking point on that.
Correct.
Let's bring things a little closer to home for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. This is the one that... I was
going to make a Grey's Anatomy joke too, and I'm like, this is not appropriate. So you guys keep going.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, the one that for us as in the managed service provider, IT managed service provider here, is the Kaseya breach that happened earlier this year, and over the 4th of July weekend. I know I was sitting looking at working on July 2nd on Friday, and all of a sudden you're like, that's a weird. What's this? We saw it splashed across different news outlets and whatnot, and we kind of had a quick internal meeting, like, hey, this is what we don't use this system anymore. We checked. We use Kaseya. They're a great company. They do some really great products. Very happy working with them for many years. We don't use the product that was impacted, but it was a pretty bad breach, and it could have been much worse. I think that if the attackers had done it on July 3rd, it would have been even worse than it was on July 2nd. I was some date time thing, which plagues all IT people, by the way. Daylight savings time is the enemy of IT. But that being said, this was a pretty bad breach in terms of that. But basically, they applied the supply chain, the underlying systems that people at MSP use to manage and monitor systems. So it's like it's attacking the system that manages the systems, which sounds a little kind of convoluted. But
it's getting the key into the system that allows you to do whatever you want.
Right.
And you're putting yourself into a control panel that has access to all that person's customers.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, the people use the word supply chain attack, and whenever I use that term, I always say to someone, it's not like a shipping container. A supply chain is not those things. It's what
it is. It's the call is coming from inside the house.
Right. Exactly. So, but this one was, and I think, Kaseya responded. There was a lot of back and forth on it. It just goes to show you this. There's so many pieces to any company's the service delivery and working with their clients, and you have to be prepared for those systems to be offline. As always, we have to recommend a tabletop. If you're an MSP out there, take the time to stop and say, well, what happens when the RMM and the PSA and all the pieces that we use are offline or impacted by a breach or that sort of thing. And and this ripples throughout a wider industry. I mean, this kind of falls on the heels of the SolarWinds breach, which I don't know. I know myself when I work with a lot of customers now. You have to attest that you have never had SolarWinds in the past 18 months in your environment or a year. There's all these like kind of pieces now because of that, the unknownness of those supply chain attack against SolarWinds. So we don't want to bring that in. That was not 2021, but they're
it's very valid.
Oh my gosh, but it still feels like
vendor in the industry that we work with, and these are things that can happen. Really quickly, we have a comment from Steph, and we haven't seen him for a little bit.
Hey, Steph.
We're talking about large organizations right now, but there are things that SMBs can do to put the right items in place. And
that's a great question.
I think George, you mentioned tabletopping earlier, and I think that's a really good place to start because that's where you discover where things just aren't quite where they need to be.
Exactly. Really using the tabletop as a mechanism to build your risk profile and your risk mitigate. Because one of the fundamentals I find that I think a lot of folks overlook, or it's really easy to, is that if you don't know what you have, you have no idea what you have to secure. Yes. You have no idea how you're going to protect it. You have no idea how you're going to kind of manage it. And that goes back to a deeper level of conversation or shadow IT, people making changes to configurations without kind of pre-flighting them. There's so much of that. So I think if top 2-3 things I'd say for SMBs to do, honestly, take time, tabletop your systems, not from an IT perspective, but from a business risk place, just so you understand what you have. Hey,
Yeah.
we need these things to do this, to deliver. And then I hate to go back on the train of multi-factor authentication. Get that MFA
It's huge.
going.
Yeah.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
I read
It's like locking your front door. It's just
it's a beep in the
do
car,
it.
right? It's
Yeah.
and I think I read that Microsoft released a study saying that, and don't quote me, but from what I remember, was that over 98 or 99% of breaches that happened to Office 365 did not have MFA enabled, right? I mean, obviously MFA can be attacked and it can be compromised, especially SMS style, but man, they have to go after it hard.
They
And
have
they
to go
want-
after someone and they have to target them. I mean,
Yes.
Correct.
let's be real here. If someone tries to get into someone else's account and realizes MFA, they could always just go with someone else. It's like the idea of
Yes.
someone going through a parking lot looking for unlocked
Pulling the
cars.
handles. It's pulling the handles.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I'd say MFA and the other part, just because the vulnerability is so high, I'd say do your staff training. Make sure that the staff understands how to get support, what to look for in emails,
Right.
what's possible. One of the things we always recommend people, like, if it's impossible, there's no way that read how to read an email. And now it's sophisticated and it's hard, and there's other tools and mitigations that we'd always like to recommend and layer on top. But those are the three. Honestly, I could go in password manager, really powerful.
I'm going to throw a fourth one in.
Sure.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Correct.
I think that's such a big one. A lot of people
Yeah.
tend to ask questions after the fact. How did this happen? Why did it happen? And not how do we prevent this from happening? What steps do we take proactively? And, I'm going to do it. You have a question about cybersecurity? Send us a question. We'll answer it in our upcoming streams. It's important. It doesn't matter if you're a customer or not. If you have a question related to cybersecurity, we would love to answer it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no stupid questions. There
are. We'd much rather you ask them.
And I think the really important thing is that no one person. I mean, you could be an expert in this, and you still don't know every part of it. It's such a vast and complex field that overlays so many different aspects of business, and it's almost like a wrapper or envelope around it that you have to look. And there's different specialists for different things, right? Like, and it's really important. So, but for us in working with our SMB clients, we want to give them the best bang for their buck, and give them the best level of protection. And once again, what we're kind of highlighting with these breaches is that so many of these breaches are preventable.
Yes.
By following these kind of fundamental best practices, and doing, and not to say that that these were definitely preventable, was we don't know, we don't have inside knowledge of it, but generally speaking,
we could use them as examples of things that could have been done. Hindsight is 20/20. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about illustrating examples of what happens when you don't put the right things in place. And that's actually going to be the topic of our stream the week after next. It's all going to be best practices for small businesses. So Stefan, stay tuned. We've got you.
We got it. And we're going to have we got some really good resources around that you can utilize in your small business, Valiant customer or not, doesn't matter. We really want, as I was in the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we really want people
it's October,
to really understand how they can improve their security and position, protect themselves in their business, both personally and privately. As I said, it's something I think we as a whole, Valiant, is really passionate about, and we train for it, and we want people to be safe and secure so that they can follow and achieve their goals and achieve what they want to get done. It's really hard
if it prevents one person from having that sense of vulnerability after being attacked, then it was worth it. I share a name with a D-list celebrity. My credit cards used to get compromised all the time.
Right.
In fact, that's why you see me with my middle initial, just for a little bit of differentiation. I mean, I've got so many stories I could share about days that, I'd go to use like my Amex card and it got declined for like, charges taking place in a brothel in Reno, Nevada. And I'm like, sorry, guy, I'm on Long Island just trying to get a Long Island ticket. And the guy's like, oh, you're going to get the name of the guy from Lost. Okay, this is a problem. And like, honestly, there was a period of about 3 or 4 years where I would have a compromise like that, like every 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we just legally changed all the stuff to have the middle initial and it calmed down.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's such I love that anecdote, Matt, and I think that's a really good detail to sort of close out on, with just like, there are little things you can do to address your situation, to address your IT presence. And So this was really good. Thank you guys so much. Also, just quick note, if your boss asks for a bunch of gift cards, it's probably not them.
Yes.
That's very prevalent. I've heard that a lot of clients.
Except for George. If George asks for Olive Garden gift cards, you get them.
I'm
the absolute last person that will ever ask anyone for a gift card ever. I assure you.
And so is your boss, probably.
So yeah. And honestly, it's so funny. And that's to kind of wrap it up. That's the one that happens to new people when they start because they're so afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and I think that's one of the things like inside your, and this goes like more of a deeper conversation. Like, to have good security, you have to have better transparency.
Yes.
The more you can see what's happening in the system, the better outcome you're going to have. Much like open source software or anything else that's kind of open and free. People can't hide in the shadows here, and
everything is better when multiple points of view are involved. I think that comes down to, and I think that also kind of helps us segue into what we're going to do next week, which is going to be a stream dedicated to social engineering. What it is, how does it impact businesses, and it's one of those topics I love talking about. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with it next week. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
It's really cool stuff.
And the thing, there are all these references to social engineering techniques that we see every single day, and I think it'll be interesting to kind of make light of those. And I think the more that you're aware of those things, the more that you're going to see when they're taking place. It's just like when you buy a new car, and all of a sudden the same model of the car is all over the road, and you notice it.
Yeah,
it helps with awareness as to pitfalls. So we're going to do that next week, and it's exciting.
And that's exactly that's why we do these live streams, the awareness, the training, all of that. So guys, thank you all. Matt, George, thank you guys for being here. I love my Thursday mornings because of the stream. And if you enjoyed today's stream, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And if you have any questions or topics you want to see us discuss, because we're so good at it, send us a message and fill out our online question forms. And again, subscribe to YouTube, keep up with our live streams and other content. We have a great knowledge base that actually our training manager, she creates too, very small videos that are a lot of how-tos. And please visit us at thevaliantway.com and learn more about our services and us. There, awesome. You can see more about us. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Thanks a lot. See you all next week. Bye now.
Bye.